Welcome again to the School of Health Freedom. Today we have some amazing information. Our lesson today is on understanding disease. First, I want you to see, I've shown you some blood samples before. Remember what this one is? It's like got the halo around it, it's all happy, interstitial fluid is clean, it's well nourished, this is healthy blood. And this is where we get into a diabetic or a disease state, which can be temporary or it can be constantly going like that. And when it becomes chronic, when this becomes chronic, then you see that these polarize as such. So understanding disease. The first thing that I want to read to you from the scriptures about disease is found in the Book of Mormon. I did not find a Bible reference for those who go straight from the Bible, so I welcome you to contact me with a similar reference to this, because I know that it's probably in Isaiah and I've just missed it. This is in 2 Nephi chapter 2 verse 11, and it reads, "For it must needs be that there is an opposition in all things." So the opposite of health would be disease, right? We can't have health without having these other options of disease. Keep that in mind. Be grateful today for disease and try to understand it, because with that knowledge then you can move here, especially if it's your time and place, and usually it is. So moving on. "If not so, my firstborn in the wilderness, righteousness." So in other words, this is a son who is a father who is instructing a son, Lehi, instructing his sons. "If not, righteousness could not be brought to pass, neither wickedness, neither holiness, nor misery, neither good nor bad. Wherefore all things must be a compound in one." This reminds me of some verses in Psalms, and I don't know exactly where they are. So again, do that research and get back to me. "Wherefore it should be one body. If it should be one body, it must needs remain as dead, having no life, neither death, nor corruption, nor incorruption, happiness, nor misery, neither sense nor insensibility." Verse 12, "Wherefore it must needs have been created for a thing of naught." If we didn't have health and disease, if we didn't have opposites in all things, then there would really be no reason for this life. And why do we need to have opposites in all things? Because Heavenly Father loves us and gives us a choice, an agency. And we get to choose at any time in our lives what we want to create and what we want to help others create and how we're going to serve Him and serve others. And so think about your choice and how it affects what kind of health or disease that you are living or that the ones you are serving are living. "Wherefore there would have been no purpose in the end of its creation if we didn't have opposition in all things. Wherefore this thing must needs destroy the wisdom of God and His eternal purposes and all the power and mercy and the justice of God." So be grateful that we get a choice, right? So today we're going to understand more about disease. Know that you always have a choice to create health or to create disease within this. And the more that you know, sometimes it's enough, when you find out enough, it's enough to convince you that you actually want to be healthy, right? Because sometimes there's experiences that you've had, that your ancestors have had, that you've been taught either directly or inadvertently, and you've been taught patterns that do not create health. Or you've been taught great patterns that do create health, right? When you get the right information and when you get the right desire within you to move forward and create what you want to create, you have that power. You can do any one of these. So with that in mind, let's get started. understanding disease. The pH miracle, going back to Dr. Robert Young, because he has so much research in this, and he's actually caught it on film, and I truly believe that he was inspired. He's a late descendant of Brigham Young, and what inspired him was first, matter is not destroyed nor created, was a quote that he found from Brigham Young. Again, you researchers, that's online. I don't have the quote in this whole thing, but I felt inspired to say that. So you can find it online very easily. Brigham Young, matter is not destroyed nor created. And when it is seen that way, Dr. Robert Young took that information and took some other people's information, like Enderlein and some other doctors that I'll be introducing you today, who are brilliant and have furthered the science of health. And they have shown that matter simply changes form. It's called pleomorphism when we're talking about the blood. So follow me with that idea and go research it a little bit more so you understand the principle of matter is not destroyed nor created. It has always existed. It is eternal. And it changes form and raises energy, and we advance and progress in that same pattern. It's brilliant. I did send out, or I will be sending out, an article from Cleon Skousen, and that one will also explain more. So, with that preface, the pH miracle, Robert Young and Shelley Young say physiological disease and dis-ease, meaning the feeling of dis-ease in the body, got achiness or other things, are almost always the result of what? Too much acid. You know this, I've already taught this to you. Stressing the body's pH balance. Stressing puts the body into stress mode. There's a whole bunch of hormones that come with that stress mode. There's a whole bunch of side effects of, like for instance, not being able to let go of toxins, which would then let go of stored fats, which would then detox the blood, things like that. pH balance to the point where it provokes the body into producing the symptoms that we call disease. There's a lot of people who this time of year, you know, it's January, that we start up our new health routines, and I love that. It's a great time for renewal. We don't have the holidays coming up to gorge ourselves for a while until we just hit Valentine's Day and people get chocolates and all of our other things that we do in America that are less than healthy. When we are charged up like that, sometimes some of our greatest disappointments are, I am doing so good, what is going wrong? I have been doing, you can probably list off tons of things. How come my body's not healthier? How come the amount of hard work and exercise and eating and drinking water and other things aren't working the way that I had imagined them to change me yet? Well, some of these things will teach you, and some disease is when our body isn't letting go of toxins, which would then allow us to burn fat when fat stores are there. And it's frustrating, the body can go into a plateau with either toxins, different kinds of diseases, or with weight loss. So keep all those things in mind as I teach you. pH imbalances are these two right here. Your cells change to adapt to their environment. I want to teach you something else. Before I had said, all right, we've got a sort of diabetic blood situation. There's too many sugars in there. There can be too many acids in here. There can be a number of other things that are creating more acids. So, without prefacing too much of what I'm already going to tell you, I want to tell you about the electrical charge. There's an electrical charge. Your body is aquatic. It's based off of water, right? It's also electric. There's a lot of electricity that governs and keeps the flow of the body, and you have to have everything that's needed to create that energetic flow of magnetism and energy and everything else. So the electrical charge on these cells also help to kind of fold them in. And then the electrical charge helps these ones right here to just bind together. And so there is a change that happens, and before I had explained, okay, healthy blood and then more acid and way more acid on a constant level, that they kind of shrivel up and they don't want to be exposed. They're reducing their surface area so that not as much acid, it's just a theory of mine that not as much acid can touch that. More research into this has to do with your electrical charges. So your electrical charge in the cells are going to be happy and healthy in an alkaline environment, and it's not going to stay open and free when it's in more acidic environments. So either way, whether it be they just don't want to be exposed to much acid, or whether their electrical charges change, the same thing is true. You need to be alkaline to be healthy. Moving on, pH and health. The body is meant to be alkaline, averaging about, this says 7.4 if you can see it, on an alkaline acid basis. So look at these colors here. This is like battery acid. Okay, battery acid, if you've ever got it on your hands before, it's something you want to wash off. Why? Because it'll eat through your skin. If you would have that going through your veins, you would not be here. But your body does go acidic as soon as you die. And there's a few things that are involved in that that I'll share. But we'll go through this first. So lemon juice is here, but keep in mind that lemon and lemon juice is, when it's fresh squeezed and when it's alive and whole, it actually is alkalizing to the blood, because the acids go and carry away toxins. It doesn't carry away the calciums and the minerals that are needed for your bones. It has an overall alkaline ash because it carries away those toxins and it puts minerals into the body. So even though it's acidic going in, the only thing it can affect is really if you're just chewing on too many lemons with your teeth, and your teeth will get that direct thing, or if you're just drinking water with lemon in it all the time. If you notice that your teeth are affected in any way, just make sure that you clean them off and make sure you're getting plenty of calcium to replace that. Vinegar can be here. A lot of vinegars show, like a brown rice vinegar is at a 5.0. Orange juice is also right around here. Orange juice acidifies the blood because it has so much sugar in it, and the sugar byproduct can increase yeast, and then the yeast from it, if you go into diabetic blood, meaning you have way too much of the orange juice at once, and then those yeasts and other things put more toxins into the body. So whenever, we'll talk more about that. So your blood is at a 7.4 right here. Water that's distilled is a 7.0. Seawater is about an 8.0. Now, wouldn't it be great to just drink seawater and alkalize? No, because remember we talked about the isotonic properties of the blood where there's osmosis going on. That means you can't have too much salt or things are just going to shrivel up, and the cells are not going to be happy like this in a saline solution that's too saline. These will actually shrivel up, or I can't remember if they get bigger or if they get smaller, but they do not stay happy. So there's a reason why you go crazy when you start drinking seawater, because it throws all of your body chemistry off. But something that you can do is take your 7.0 distilled water. If you have nothing else to alkalize, you can put just a tiny bit of Redmond real salt or any of the whole food salts, just a pinch into your water, and that will slightly alkalize the water for you and give you the building blocks to create your electrolytes. Ammonia, I have been bathed, my feet have like walked and bathed in ammonia. That's not a good thing. It detoxed out of me over years later, so don't do that. If you're going to clean the floors with ammonia, Make sure that you wear flip-flops or something like that. Bleach and lye as well. You've probably heard stories of people who have drunk bleach before. My dad's one of those. My grandma was doing some laundry and didn't mean to set the bleach cup off to the side, and my dad came in thirsty from play and got a drink and was wondering why it was so chlorinated. He got the help that he needed and he's fine, but and he's almost 80 years old and healthy as a horse. But bleach is very caustic if it is too much in your water. That can actually kill you, worst case scenario. Lye is even more acidic. Now lye is great for a lot of things. It's great for exterior. It's made from ashes, I believe, and the lye is the ashes are similar to like charcoals and things like that will chelate a lot of substances. But lye is the it's way too alkaline, in other words. And things can be either acidic enough that they'll burn you or alkaline enough that they'll burn you. Just like when your hand touches something that's too hot, that's the acidic side, right? Hot, heat. If you touch something too hot, you can blister up, or even worse, with your burns. If you touch something too cold, like, what do you call that, below 70 degree, ice.
Dry ice.
Dry ice, yes, dry ice, it can burn you as well. And so acids and alkaline bases are very similar to your hot and your super colds. Your body doesn't like extremes. It likes homeostasis. Keep that in mind. Okay, there are two sets of rules that I have seen. What I'm presenting to you is theory-based and science-based at the same time. I'm taking science and I'm adding inspiration to it, and it's only as much inspiration as I have received thus far. I know that the rest of the picture will unfold in the years to come, and maybe you'll receive that inspiration faster than I get to. But by me sharing this with you, I think it'll open up a whole new way of thinking, and it should help you as it has helped me. Two sets of rules. One set of rule for an acid constitution is what most medical science and practice diagnostic centers for disease and beliefs are based off of. You heard of Louis Pasteur? Okay, let me explain Louis Pasteur. He said that your environment around you influences whether you get sick or not. Does that sound like a self-reliant or self-sustaining, or even a self-responsibility sort of position? It's not. I truly believe in, we have a stewardship. We are given this gift, this body, right? We have a stewardship over it, and we can create health with the resources that we have, or we can create disease, right? If you're on the same plane with me, then the rest of this will make sense. The second set of rule is a set of rules for an alkaline constitution. So moving back to this, there's a set of rules for this, and there's a set of rules for everything else. And this is the dividing line. Are you alkaline or are you acidic? Are you nourished or are you malnourished? Are you hydrated or are you dehydrated? Okay? So Beauchamp is the one that says the body lives a higher law of amazing, or he said, I presume from Beauchamp's studies that the body lives a higher law of amazing resilience, and that is within your alkaline constitution. Back then they didn't have the microscopes and things built to really understand acid, alkaline, all of those things. Dr. Robert Young actually took these things and furthered it, looked under a microscope, and has proven their theories. He has proven Beauchamp's theory, and I'll show you more why. Okay, there's a lot of information here, and I can send this out to you. This is something I'm collecting. It's new. It's on somatids. So in the beginning of, it was our very first filming, Introduction to the Human Body. I told you that the cell was the smallest known unit of life. Guess what? There's more. This is even smaller. It's called a somatid. It is in the middle of the cell. It is a small unit. It carries all the properties of life, and it is what creates what we call pleomorphism. Pleomorphism simply means that the cell, the somatid in the cell, will change life form, will change. I will show you. There's a whole segment that I want you to watch on this, and you will understand it. So you will get that link emailed to you. Enderlein's wheel. It's explained in the video as well. And I would show the video on camera, but that's not my right, so I can send you to the website, and that is where you legally can look at it, and then they'll get the hits on their website. Hopefully you understand that. So I'll send you to there, and that is part of your homework to watch that, and you're going to be amazed. When I saw this video and I started to really understand what Dr. Young's research has developed and what it's growing into, it's changing the world of medicine. Enderlein's wheel. Dr. Young looked at Enderlein's wheel. This was done, I don't know, last century. And Enderlein looked at the somatid. Again, it's a smaller life form. It lives within each cell. Every single animal cell. It's not just human, all animal cells. And the cycle that they can go through, as discovered by Gaston Naessens. And Gaston Naessens, Naessens. You can look him up, but he's also talked about in the video. So you have about 3 to 4 stages of actual health within the larger Enderlein wheel. I'm going to explain this as succinct as I can and allow you to go explore and really look into this. You'll want to spend hours. The somatid. They are tiny, they are in a cell. They can change form, and oftentimes they'll get a little bit larger as they do. Now, there are about 4 stages of healthy somatids in the large wheel. There are stages where they turn into spores. Yes, the somatid changes form, and I will show you something on film here in just a minute. To show you this process. Double spores, bacterial form, double bacterial form, rod form, and we'll actually see the pleomorphic change of a somatid in a blood cell to a rod bacteria, which is what Dr. Young caught on film and has presented everywhere. Bacterial form with double spores, bacterial form with many others. It just keeps going. Eventually this will burst, and then it basically is sending more babies out there to create more and more. In other words, these are the cycles of how your viruses begin, bacteria are next, and then your fungal presences that come in the blood, and eventually the life forms of actual, spores go into yeast, which then go into molds and fungus, like fungal forms. So it'd be the difference between the spores, right, for a mushroom and an actual full-grown mushroom, and then a virus to a bacteria to an eventual form of parasites. There are certain parasites that simply pleomorph in the body and then they reproduce. And then there's others that you invite into the body because your body's acidic and there's lots of food for it to munch up, and it's just there to clean your body out. So there are all of these different forms. I'm going to encourage you to go and research that on your own. So this is larger, the different cycles that you can see. This is the underside I was showing. Microbial, globular forms. They just become more and more disease infesting the further down the line that they get. And then these almost look like parasites right here. I'm not sure they're called parasites yet, but look at them. They're pleomorphing, or changing into more solid tissues, and they seem to have a fibrous makeup that is very similar to your connective tissue. Okay, so does bacteria really spread as we once thought? What I'm going to do is we're going to turn off the camera. I'm going to come back with one of these, and I want you to watch Dr. Young's actual capture of a rod bacteria. Okay, I have permission from Dr. Young to show this to you. The biological transformation of a rod bacteria into a red blood cell. Miraculous. Dr. Robert Young. You can now witness for yourself Dr. Young's scientific breakthrough evidence of biological transformation, or pleomorphism. As stated by Neil Solomon, MD, PhD, and former head of research at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Young may be on the threshold of a new biology whose principles, if proven, could revolutionize the biology and medicine worlds. It depicts the first time that they've ever caught pleomorphism in action. That's the summary. And you get it on his microscope that he built that has a camera on it. If you look at this right here, this was a red blood cell. There's a somatid that took action. He basically took this interstitial fluid, and it was alkaline, and then he put sugars into it, so it was diabetic blood, and now it is going back. So right here, it's finishing, it's changing back into a red blood cell, and he can get it to change to a rod by making it acidic, and then he can get it to change back into a red blood cell by making it alkaline again. It's never been seen before until he showed these to Harvard and to all of the top universities of the world. So more information on here. I really like this website. You can find a lot of his information on many diseases as you're trying to understand them. phmiracleliving.com. Also foreveryoung.com with a PH, PHOREVER, young.com. Okay, and pause. Did you see that? That is a whole different perspective on disease, right? Okay, for years we've lived out the worst fears based on Louis Pasteur's idea that if you are exposed to a disease, you're going to get it. We quarantine our children, right? It's not a bad idea. I'll explain a little bit more. I'm not saying don't keep your kids home. My daughter's home with a fever right now, and she needs to rest, right? And she can be contagious, but the idea of being contagious is almost a farce when you look at these pleomorphic examples. The responsibility goes back to you. Now, I'm not going to go 100%, don't worry, those who are fearing that I'm telling you that contagious doesn't even exist. It does, but I want to tell you how I foresee this happening. Because if it's true, if what we just saw on this YouTube website right here is for real, and you saw it with your own eyes, and I felt the inspiration that this is how things are for a long time, and if you feel that too, then your responsibility to create health in your body is the most important thing. And it's not what you're exposed to. It's not what other people are doing to you. It's not what the outside world does. Number one, if somebody walks into a room, they have some sort of flu or some other disease that they are dealing with that is rampant in their blood, and they have all of these somatids that have transformed, right, into the different kinds of viruses or bacteria that's playing out in their body. What does that mean for you? Well, what did you eat for breakfast? What amount of water have you had? How hydrated are you? How healthy is your blood? Where is your blood in the whole part of this? If you have stayed alkaline, the human body is meant to be alkaline by design and acidic by function. So keeping that in mind, when you are alkaline with your intake of food, then it helps to clear out the acids that are a natural byproduct of you living. We all need alkaline fuel to avoid over-acidification, because if you go to this, let's say you show up in a room where somebody sneezes who has that flu that's going rampant with their fever and their chills and their sweating and their weird things that are going on, and you've got this, do you think you're going to get it? I'm not going to say for 100% that you are, but if they sneeze into that room, you are the one who's susceptible if your blood is like this. So what happens if your blood is like this? If you stay alkaline, acidification of the body naturally happens at death, and then the microbial breakdown begins, right? If acidification occurs while you're alive, symptoms and or disease are a result. I'm sorry, I probably have the wrong picture here. But if you stay alkaline, it creates life. It creates health. It creates a shield of protection. If your body goes acid when it dies, all of your cells immediately, the somatids, are following God's command. That's how I see it. Okay, it's my perspective. The blood has stopped flowing. The blood has to be moving for your blood cells to actually stay looking like this. Otherwise, they all stop and they clump up, even if it's alkaline in there. So when it stops, it naturally becomes acidic first. When it stops, the somatids change form, and they are meant to turn you into dust immediately, that soon. What happens if this process is happening while you are still alive? Then you're experiencing disease. Do you see my perspective on it? You can agree, disagree, you can take that information and take it further, but my perspective on this and what I felt inspired was going on in my body was that when my body is acid, the body goes, oh, I know what I'm supposed to do here, and it pleomorphs a little bit at a time. It doesn't tear down your body entirely. You don't die instantly just because you went a little bit acid. Just because it was Valentine's Day and you had a little bit of chocolate, you're not going to die, right? But it's responding to your command and to what you're doing to it, because you have power over your body. You are a creator. You create health, or you give it permission to tear down with disease. Does that make sense? The command also comes in the form of, are you alkaline or are you acid? So a person who's sick comes into a room, sneezes. Louis Pasteur is right. If you have a bloodstream like this that's already sort of tearing down, it's not quite, it's not going to turn you to dust yet, but it's acid and it's creating disease. You can receive more disease very easily. Still, not everybody who's like this is going to get that illness in that room just because somebody was contagious to them. Does that make sense? Okay. The things that are affecting health, hang on, I'm going to finish that thought. the person who has the shield and protection around them, most likely they're the ones who don't get ill. And they seem to be immune to everything. And they can help a lot of people. There is an immunity that also comes. I'm not going to discard that. And that's where the more that you're exposed to things, the more immune you can become to those things. So if you're to live in a bubble all the time and not go out and face all the opposition in the world, then you don't gather up the strength in your immune system through a process of what's called antibodies that then create basically an army against specific diseases. So if you're exposed to something, it creates up an army and it fights against that disease. And then if you're exposed to something else and you catch it, right, Louis Pasteur's terms, then you create a strength against that disease. So there's a lot of things that are in our favor to be in great health. Things that are not going to create health in the body: alcohol, drugs, caffeinated drinks, promiscuity, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, heavy workloads, and increased stresses. In the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, we have the word of wisdom. And in the first verses it says, don't drink alcohol, don't drink hot drinks, referring specifically to the caffeinated drinks of tea and coffee of those times. I think that if Joseph Smith were here in this day and age, there'd be a whole lot more things on that list. But we are given the privilege of inspiration to know what can be good. And some things, I'm sorry, science just proves it. Get off the soda. Those who are drinking soda, get off of it now. There's no reason to put it in your body. It's CO2, the byproduct of your lungs. Your lungs are trying to get rid of the toxin of CO2 constantly, which is what makes the bubbles. The sugar, which creates a diabetic blood. The acids otherwise that are added into it. Just get off the juice, okay? I promise you'll feel a lot better if you get off of soda. Yes, your diet soda is even worse than the other. It's just that it takes longer to take its effect for the diet soda. So switch to waters, switch to coconut water, juices, fresh juices. You don't even want to know what's in the concentrates. You don't even want to know. If you do, read the book Squeezed. It's terrible. Okay. Affecting health. Only in America do people order a double cheeseburger, large fries, and 32-ounce Diet Coke. Does that make sense? I'm on a diet. Let me just order a Diet Coke with all this other food. A lot of us don't do that anymore, but there's still some people who do that. And the other countries just laugh. But then they accept our McDonald's and then they start doing the same things. I've seen it. Other things that are affecting health are our genetics, and I want to talk a little bit about that. Family and socioeconomic background, in other words, what you've learned, what you do, what your environment is, and a bad diet, lack of exercise, lack of social support, risk-taking behaviors, negative attitude, and a lack of a connection to God. If your whole body is filled with love and light, and you are here to serve Him, and you are connected to Him, and serving and moving forward, your life, your health, your everything can change. And the instant that your soul fills with light and with love and chases away all the darkness, that is when your body starts to truly heal. Why? Because light is health. Love is God. God is love. And where He is, you are filled with His love. If you are doing things that are not emanating the light and love of God, repent, stop doing those things, and it'll actually improve your health. If there's anything that you have accepted into your soul that is darkness, ask for the atonement to cleanse it. Ask to be filled with light and ask for that area of the body. I think I talked about this before, but I'm going to say it again. Your body will communicate with you, your mind. Okay? You've got your mind, your spirit, your body. All of them work as one. There's 3 entities that are there working as one. And just as God and His Spirit and Jesus Christ work together, your body needs to bring to the consciousness what needs to be cleansed out. You repent of it, and then you ask to be filled with light. And you can receive inspiration from the Spirit at that point to move forward. That inspiration is accessible to you whenever you open up your mind and your heart to receive it. One way to try and open up your mind and heart is to simply ask the different organs of your body to speak to you. If that sounds weird, I'm sorry. It's a way to open up and to receive inspiration. If you want to do it a different way or explain it a different way, I understand that. But I simply go to the heart and I say, "Dear heart," I don't know how else to do this communication thing, so I write it in a letter. That's my way. "Dear heart, are you healthy? Is there anything more I can do to help you? I feel sick in this area, or something's not right in this area. My circulation's not wonderful. Is it something that I need to do for you?" And then you can write the inspiration that comes. You can simply kneel down in prayer and go through the different areas of the body, and the more specific you are with your questions, and the more specific your answers will be. But the Lord wants us to learn. He doesn't, if He just gave us everything without allowing us the agency and the progress which He gives us through His love, He's not going to take that away. As you do the work and seek out the inspiration, and we'll talk more in the coming films on this, then you can receive any answer. You can do better than the diagnostics in the hospitals. Sometimes you'll be led to go to what is already known and gifted to us on this earth, and you will be led to get those tests that are done. And when you receive those inspirations, go and get them. I was inspired when I was sick to get specific blood tests done for specific pathogens and viruses. And when the doctors came back with the tests and they were positive, they said, "How did you know?" I said, "I don't. God knows." And He told me. And they're like, "Okay, yeah, well, whatever." Thank you. Otherwise, it's thousands of dollars worth of tests, because they're just needle in a haystack, just stabbing into the dark, trying to find answers. They're just practicing medicine the best that they can, and they're wonderful. So guide them with your inspiration. You're in charge. Health and disease. Where do disease germs... Okay, I'm told to go back. Genetics. If you think that genetics are something that you can just blame everything on, this is not even the education you want to go down. This is not the pathway for you, okay? Genetics are there. Genetics are a code. Genetics create order in the body. Genetics, as one of my friends has said, and I don't know much more than this, but he understood that genetics are an energy. And I learned in high school that it was kind of like this zipper thing. They explained it as a zipper with teeth. And you would have different amino acids in different combinations that would make each tooth on the zipper, and then it zips up into this DNA and creates this double helix form that's twisted and curled, and then it goes throughout the body and is DNA. And that's what it does, right? Is it helps everything create in order how it's supposed to. There's a lot more to DNA that we don't understand. Because number one, Dr. Christopher worked with some Down syndrome children, and as he increased the nourishment in their bodies and the herbs that he was inspired to give to the parents that then chose to give them to them and did these treatments, even the very faces and the characteristics of the Down syndrome started to improve and change. Never went 100% away, but it improved and changed, and their lives and their lifestyles improved. That's example number one. Example number two, I have some friends who started up what's called Sun Warrior Protein. And the Sun Warrior crew is really a family. It's an amazing company. Their children, they have these twin daughters who are about my age, are right around 40-ish now. And they have what's called CF, cystic fibrosis. It usually takes the life of children well before their 40s. And it is painful. It can send you to the hospital many times. Their experience was, and the reason why they started up Sun Warrior, was if they gave their children mostly raw foods, kept their blood alkaline, and the Sun Warrior Protein was the type of plant-based protein that they would feed their daughters. If they kept up this healthy lifestyle, then the daughters didn't exhibit too many signs of CF. But there were people who would babysit their children, and when they would take them and say, can't believe that the parents would deprive these kids of McDonald's, and there's somebody who took the daughters when they were young over to McDonald's, and then they came back into town, and after having fed them a whole bunch of food that was not right for keeping them alkaline, these girls were sick for a very long time. It took their bodies weeks to detox it out, and then weeks more to then rebuild what was torn down. Can you imagine? If that happens to somebody with that disease, how long does it take to detox out of you? My body is similar to that. I don't have a CF diagnosis. I don't have, other diagnoses at this time. I just maintain a more alkaline bloodstream because I go into extreme pain and detox symptoms, and sometimes I'll even pass out from my pH going way too acidic. And so I understand that. If you keep your bloodstream where it needs to be, there is so much health that can avoid disease. If I were to live my life like this, I would have died 10 years ago. I would be here teaching you. If I were to live my life like this, I'd probably be some case in a hospital, if I hadn't died yet, with many different forms of what they call diagnoses for specific diseases. At one time, I'd gotten enough tests to prove that I possibly had lupus, and then they were following me to see if I developed all of the rest of the signs and symptoms of a progressing lupus. I changed that. I went alkaline, and then the disease didn't progress. Lyme's disease, parasites, many other things that I've gone through. And I still deal with some things. If I weren't dealing with things, then I wouldn't be learning more. But I am creating a better and better health than I have ever. And I'm so excited to have learned what I've learned through all this opposition over these last 10 years. Okay, so genetics. It's not in stone. Your genetics can change. And if you don't believe me that genetics can change, go back through all of the research that's been done where they showed that generation 1 in rats then evolve and change to be better adapted in the next generation. Every scientific study has actually proven, when they're doing genetic studies, that genetics change. You co-evolve constantly with your environment. That DNA zipper changes. It puts in fear sometimes. Fear of tiger, avoid tiger. Or courage around tiger. Or tiger is friend. There are all of these things that can be inscripted into our emotions, into our mind, into our patterns, and into the way that our tissues and things are developed. If you think that genetics are in stone, this is not the place for you. If you think that genetics could be energy wavelengths, then that's something that I'm just learning about and just going in to discover. And I would love your phone call. I'd love to learn more, because it seems to make sense. And inspiration seems to show me that why wouldn't genetics actually be an energetic emission of how this body and this space is to create its own order. And then it can be changed by a single thought. Molecules of Emotion, a whole book written on how biochemistry is changed by your mere thoughts. And if your thoughts can actually change things, that is more proof, scientific proof, that if your thoughts change into actual molecules of emotion, DNA has part of that. DNA is how the order of the body is carried out. DNA is constantly created. If you want new directions for your body, change your thoughts, align with God, be filled with light, act with love, and repent in between. Okay? You can do anything. You can change anything. You actually create and have control over more than you think. Health and disease. Where do disease germs live? They are scavengers. They can live only 1 week. I'm going to start over. They are scavengers and can live only on weak and wasting away cells, excess mucus, and in toxic conditions. Healthy cells do not pleomorph into scavengers. The somatids stay within the cell in a normal. And scavengers are not attracted or contagious to healthy and clean cell structures. This is Dr. Christopher, Dr. John R. Christopher, who I learned from. So now that he, in the 30s and 50s, is a doctor, and even on into the 1980s, said these things and taught these things, we have Dr. Robert Young, who is proving them with a microscope. Okay, this is a whole bunch of information that if you want, I can email it. It's on new research that I found, so the next generation of students will actually get that. Anabolic is the building state. We talked about this, and catabolic is the breakdown state. The 3 simplified categories are nutrient deficiencies. You can also tell with the calcium that we learned about right here, the wrong kind of nutrients as well can be really bad. Just a little light on that, I feel like I need to tell you. Thyroid. You have receptor sites, right? And everywhere in the body where you would receive nutrition in the blood, it's an actual little receiving receptor site. It's kind of like you go to the post office and, whatever is inserted into that mailbox can be received, and it's only for that address. Well, in your thyroid, you receive iodine in the same receptor site that you receive just a few other nutrients. So in other words, there's maybe 3 or 4 different kinds of packages that would be allowed to go to box 907 at the post office, right? And there's a whole bunch of different 907s because it covers all of the thyroid with this analogy and example. The other package that can be received into that mailbox 907 is chlorine. And so I used to teach water aerobics, and I didn't understand why the thyroid functioning in my body was getting lower and lower, and things were getting worse and worse, even though I was trying so many good things to help it. And it's just because I needed to make sure that iodine or my thyroid supplements were taken before I got to the pool, so that 907 wasn't already full with chlorine by the time I got home, and when I took the iodine supplements, then it wasn't going into the mailbox. Hopefully that makes sense. There's receptor sites everywhere in your body, and so you have to get the correct kind of nutrition into the body in a balance. And almost every food that's out there has some of every nutrient that you need, and certain ones are more concentrated in different ones. But every food is miraculous. It's almost like we have a gift from Heavenly Father that doesn't matter what we eat, each one of them are going to give them most of the nutrients that we need. The concentrations that we need would come from a wide array of the full spectrum of the rainbow of colors in all of your vegetables, fruits, and then in all the wonderful protein sources and grains and other things. So in other words, a balanced diet. We've already talked somewhat about that. Bloodborne pathogens and illnesses. You looked at viruses, bacteria, and fungus, and then parasites. The things to remember here are your blood and how healthy it is key. You have either Louis Pasteur, which said, you know what, eat what you want, eat, drink, and be merry. It doesn't matter what your body is like. It's where you go, it's who sneezes on you, it's what you're contagious to. And he said that was the only way that things happen. Beauchamp said it is your blood, it is how healthy it is that matters, and the more resilient a person already is, the more resilient they will be to anything they're exposed to. And then their immunity will become strong because it has been exposed to it. So there can be those who are weakened by their exposure to disease, where at the same time you have the opposite people who are strengthened by their exposure to that disease. What side do you want to be on? With two sets of rules, I would choose Beauchamp's, and I would choose self-reliance, and I would choose taking just taking on your stewardship of caring for your body, loving it, and giving everything that it needs. Injuries and wounds. So there are, with all of these, not just the injuries and wounds, there are some spiritual and emotional reasons why. We can actually attract certain things to happen. It's interesting to me that there's a book called Heal Your Body, and just about every time I've even twisted my ankle, it doesn't have to be a full sprain, I look in there and I go, that's kind of funny. I'm dealing with those emotional problems that would be attributed to my ankle. So how does that work? How can an emotion in your body, right, affect you getting injured and spraining your ankle? Wasn't it the tennis game or the tennis match that you were playing that caused it to happen because you went and ran over this way? Well, if you think about it, it's back to Beauchamp's theory. If the spirit, on the other hand, is strong in all areas, you go running that way and there's not a weakness in the ankle, right? So you're not going to turn the ankle, most likely. But wherever there's a weakness and you get injured, it really can be a sign of what's going on emotionally or spiritually with you. And if you are ready for that kind of information, go get books like Heal Your Body or Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die, or Molecules of Emotion. And you'll start to understand the science behind your emotions and how tied they are to the things that happen to you. You're creating them. And for some reason, those things happen to teach you something that you want to learn. In other words, it's serving you. It's something that you have asked for. It's an experience that you need to go through. And usually it's for learning, for you. Sometimes it's learning for somebody else. Injuries and wounds, we'll go over some more, but you can look at all the different things that can happen if you're exposed to poisonous snakes, for instance. That can be in this category. And we'll go into that with your more first aid. So thank you for joining us for understanding disease.
And at the School of Health Freedom, we've got a lot more for you next session.